Okay, everyone, welcome back to Game Week 6 preview for the Durbanites FPL. So let's start off with Wolves Liverpool. Wolves going ahead early in that game, but Liverpool fighting back to win 3-1, including an own goal by Hugo Bueno. Looking at the week ahead, Wolves have got some tough weeks coming up, including a game against Luton. Luton not doing too badly. Liverpool themselves not too bad. Spurs in game week 7 and Brighton game week 8. Both of them looking a bit tough, but still winnable for Liverpool on this current form. Then looking at Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, finishing 3-1. Villa seem to be saving the good games for the teams that they can beat. So looking at Chelsea, Brighton coming up, I don't know if they're going to put that much effort into it. Still winnable games, but maybe just be careful of bringing in those players. Looking at Crystal Palace, looks good on paper, but they do have some tough games. But Roy Hodgson is really good at getting out those results. So worthwhile looking at players like Anderson, looking at Edward. They really are playing well. Then looking at Fulham Luton. So Fulham grinding out a win against Luton. They have some fairly good games coming up. Chelsea's form has been so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Luton look good on paper, including a double game week on game week 7 to cover up the game against Burnley that they missed in game week 2. But of course, they've not managed to string together any good results, so would be cautious about looking at that. Then looking at Manchester United Brighton. So Brighton finally beating Manchester United at home after beating them last season as well. Was a bit of a shock result, I guess, for some people, but the truth is Manchester United having a lot of problems with injuries and discipline in the dressing room. So looking at the games coming up, Burnley Crystal Palace should be winnable for them, but right now their form is really in the loo. And then looking at Brighton, they've got Bournemouth this week, then Aston Villa, Liverpool, maybe some tougher games coming up, but I would still keep the Brighton players in. Then looking at Spurs and Sheffield United, again, Spurs going behind but come back for a good win in the last minutes of the game. Tough game weeks coming up. The North London Derby coming up with Arsenal this week and then Liverpool next week before they get to Luton. Probably don't bring in the Spurs players this week. Not saying they can't score, but it's going to be tough games. And then Sheffield United does really get better for them. Maybe a chance in game week 8 for Fulham. But right now, nobody that I would call out. Then looking at West Ham, Manchester City, on that game, City coming back to really score. They're grinding out the wins one after the other. Alvarez, Haaland, top form for those two up front. West Ham have got a tough string of games coming up, except for Sheffield United in game week 7. But City looks like they're cruising all the way to game week 8 when they take on Arsenal. Looking at the Newcastle Brentford game, grinding out a win again. Newcastle late coming in, Callum Wilson getting that goal. Um, Brentford, I mean, they're tough journeymen. They've got Everton, Nottingham Forest coming up, not a bad one. And against Manchester United again, given the form, probably even a sniff there. And if you look at Newcastle, finally the green games are coming to them. So Sheffield, Burnley, these should be easy wins for them. And then West Ham coming up in game week 8. It's about time to start bringing in those Newcastle players. And looking at Bournemouth Chelsea, so finally in game week 5 we had the first goalless draw. So for those that had their defenders in, awesome stuff. Chilwell letting down a lot of people in our league, not coming on the game and then coming in last minute and getting a yellow card for a net result of 0. But Sanchez giving big payouts. So looking at that, Chelsea's got a fair run of games coming up, but their form has been really poor. So not sure what will come of that. But if you have the players, maybe worthwhile to keep them on. And then looking at Bournemouth, of course, tough games coming up for them. Brighton this week, Arsenal next week, and then finally maybe some relief at Everton. Going on to the next game, looking at Everton Arsenal results. So Arsenal grinding out a result again, holding the defense strong, and then Trossard coming in, Saka also assisting. Good results for those that had defensive players out of Arsenal, and Everton unfortunately not able to pick up much. Looking at Everton, they have a chance to now break their bad luck. A good run against Brentford, Luton, Bournemouth, and for Arsenal, the derby again this week, one that they should be winnable for them. But then Bournemouth and then Manchester City in game week 8. It's going to be rough for Arsenal players. Looking at Forest and Burnley, playing out a draw. Burnley, Lyle Foster is getting goals and he's in good form. But looking at the games coming up, Manchester United and Chelsea, again, two teams that should be in good form but are not. And then Newcastle in game week 7, and then the double against Luton, but still wouldn't look at putting off the players in. However, if maybe if you've got Foster, he's good for the bench. Looking at Forest, they've got a tough couple of weeks coming up. Manchester City and then Brentford, both tough opposition before they look at Crystal Palace in game week 8. Looking at the fixture ratings and where we would go in the next 3 weeks, Brentford, Manchester City, Newcastle, probably Manchester United and Chelsea, if you really believe in that, will turn their fortunes around. But those are the teams to be looking at to fill up your team for the next 3 weeks, and ones to possibly avoid: Bournemouth, Forest, Sheffield United. I mean, they're going to struggle. Spurs, who have been having a great run of form, now are going to be tested. And then same for West Ham. So that's my advice for this week. So hope you guys are still enjoying the content. For now, please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you want to see something different. And until then, see you next week.